Welcome to Museum on the Move, and today you join us here at the Great Laxey Wheel. This is one of the Isle of Man's most iconic landmarks, and it's the largest working water wheel in the world. The wheel itself has a diameter of 22 metres and it's 96 steps to climb to get to the top. The wheel was opened on the 27th of September 1854 and was christened the Lady Isabella. Thousands of people have flocked to Laxey over the years to see this magnificent wheel in action, and her job was to pump the water out of the Laxey mine. Now today we're going to explore a little bit more about how the wheel works and also look at what life was like for the miners that worked here.
When Laxey was a mining village many years ago, there were 600 miners working under Captain Rowe, but the bottom of the mine shaft was below the water line, so they had to build a wheel to pump the water from the mine, and the Laxey wheel keeps turning, turning, turning in Lady Isabella's memory. And while the water flows, the Laxey wheel still goes, and the Laxey river runs down to the sea.
The Great Laxey Wheel is certainly impressive, but why is it here? I'm sure that you're all now familiar with the famous Laxey Wheel song, which explains a little bit about the history of this magnificent water wheel. But put simply, the Great Laxey Wheel was designed by local engineer Robert Casement to pump the water out of the mines. As early as the 1780s, zinc and lead ore was discovered in Laxey Valley and attempts were made to mine these valuable minerals. For many decades, however, flooding was a significant problem for those working underground, and so the Laxey Wheel was invented and constructed to solve this problem. The Laxey Wheel was one of a number of water wheels pumping water from the Great Laxey mines, but this was the largest and the most impressive. This magnificent wheel was water powered, and the movement generated by the wheel turning was used to drive a set of pumps which would bring water that had flooded the lower levels of the mine to the main adit. Once the water had reached the main adit, it would drain out into the Laxey River and finally out to sea. Let's take a closer look at how this magnificent water wheel works. The wheel was powered by rainwater from the Laxey hillside, which was delivered by a network of lathes and cisterns to the wheel. Water entered from the top of the wheel tower to the 168 buckets that hang around the circumference of the wheel. The rotational power generated drove a huge rod which was connected to a T-rocker at the top of the mine's engine shaft. The T-shaped rocker changed the horizontal movement of the rod to vertical movement of the pump rod in the mine shaft. Everything about the Laxey wheel and its mechanics are massive. Here you can still see the huge rod, which is 200 yards long. This movement powers the T-rocker. The T-rocker, which is also enormous in size, is still in place today at the top of the mine shaft.
The Laxey Valley was rich in mineral deposits and huge profits could be made. The miners were seeking this, galena or lead ore, and also zinc ore. Lead and zinc were the all-purpose metal of the Victorian age, and supplies were in huge demand. Many men, women and children were employed working in this industry, but the work was incredibly dangerous. At the start of each shift, the miners would face the long, slow descent to the working levels via a series of ladders. Between 1831 and 1926, there were 36 deaths in the mine and 55 serious accidents, most commonly caused by gunpowder explosions, falling down shafts, being hit with falling rocks or drowning. In 1872, a wealthy gentleman called Egbert Ridings visited the mines and described what he saw. He said the whole face of the rock for 60 feet deep was complete sparkle of brilliant mineral. The place was still after 2 hours ventilation, hanging with black powder smoke. I found great difficulty in breathing, and the perspiration was running down my body in streams, owing to the heat of the place and the close atmosphere, an atmosphere of loathsomeness and powder fumes. Women, children and old men were also employed by the Great Laxey Mines Company, and they worked on the washing floors. Their job was to separate the ores from the stone brought out of the mine before shipping to the UK. The ore was crushed on the washing room floor by huge machines powered by other water wheels. The conditions were awful for the workers on the washing room floor, who had to work extremely hard for very little pay and were outdoors all year round. By the 1900s, the mine was no longer profitable and it finally closed in 1930. This caused mass unemployment in Laxey and devastated the community, which relied on mining for hundreds of years. The Lady Isabella herself was abandoned and was at risk of being lost. But in 1946, Edward Neal, a Laxey builder, bought the wheel and saved her from demolition. She had been saved for the nation, and tourists continue to flock to see her.
Well, that's all from us from Laxey. And to learn more about the Great Laxey Wheel and the Laxey Mines, look at our learning resources online.
And the
Laxey wheel keeps turning, 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 in Lady Isabella's memory. And while the water flows, the Laxey wheel still goes, and the Laxey river runs down to the sea. Bye!
Bye!